Some people say that dinosaurs are millions of years old. I disagree. But don't take my word for that. I ask you to allow me to prove that to you. In fact, scratch that. Allow me to redundantly and rock solid prove it to you. You're watching a portion of the documentary Jurassic right about now.
Well, we were looking for someone who could tell us what a decaying dinosaur smells like, and we're with Dave Nutting from Alpha Omega Institute. Dave, some folks have said you're as old as the hills.
Well, just about.
But do you know, how does a decomposing dinosaur smell?
In the April 2006 issue of Discover magazine.
The article Bob is talking about from Discover magazine is titled Schweitzer's Dangerous Discovery.
Mary Schweitzer says that the dinosaur bones she was working on from Montana, that they smelled like cadavers that they had in the lab.
Well, what I can tell you is that when I was a youngster, at about 13, 14, 15, all the way through there, I used to be able to cut and polish a huge amount of dinosaur bone.
What's interesting about this is the innate understanding, even in the headlines, that the discoveries are dangerous. So one might ask, who are these discoveries dangerous for?
And as I was cutting this dinosaur bone, making jewelry, making just polished specimens, etc., once in a while, I would actually be grinding into this material and find it and smell this horrible rotten egg smell.
And so she telephoned Jack Horner, and she said, Jack, these bones smell like they're decomposing.
When this shy paleontologist found soft, fresh-looking tissue inside a T-Rex femur, she erased a line between past and present. Then, all hell broke loose. Interesting phrasing that they decided to go with right there.
So what does a decomposing dinosaur smell like? Rotten eggs. Kind of like a lot of things decomposing. I didn't understand the significance of it back then. Today I do. I just wish I had known that when I was 50 years younger.
And this is in Discover magazine. He said, oh yeah, all Hell Creek bones smell. And it's like,
Yes.
do they realize what they're saying?
It was the famous anatomist and paleontologist shown right here, Sir Richard Owen, who coined the term dinosaur or dinosauria, replacing the word dragon in 1841. That the creatures of ancient myth and legend found all around the globe in writing may not be as much myth as previously thought. This rock art shown on the screen right here, in fact, let's take a closer look at this one. Out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, in fact that's not even fair, out of thousands, actually tens of thousands of pieces of artwork from all sorts of different time periods, areas, and locations all around the planet Earth. I selected this particular piece of art to show you at the opener of this video. This is Amazon cave art from the edge of Peru. Now, in this particular depiction called 9 Warriors Surround Dinosaur, I picked this piece of artwork because even the hardcore secularist materialist guys who have investigated this particular cave art and all of the other cave art inside this Amazon cave right here, everyone seems to agree that this cave art and rock outcroppings in the Amazon up here in northern Peru is thousands of years old. But in terms of dinosaur legends, and speaking of caves, there's the extensive records of the Greek, Alexander the Great, later often embellished and turned into fantastical artwork during medieval times. But it's not just the extensive reports circling like a haze, the conquerors of Alexander the Great, particularly climaxing during his time period in India. But 3 centuries later, at around the time of Jesus Christ, you have Apollonius of Tyana, Greek philosopher during his journeys in the Himalayas, who reports dragons of enormous size and variety infest northern India. The countryside is full of them, and no mountain ridge was without one. But during Alexander the Great's conquering of India, the records report that even the men were afraid of the dragons, the dinosaur dragons, which would emerge from the caves, some of which were highly revered, and Alexander was asked not to kill some of the dinosaur dragons in caves, which were highly thought of as mystical creatures by the locals in India. Or how about the legendary St. George slaying of the dragon, depicted right here and immortalized as statue, and then spiraling our way forward to 1551, just for the fun of it, or actually just because we can, in the Historia Animalium, which records not only beautiful depictions of animals, particularly at that time, but records that dragons are rare but still in existence at that time. Hopping from the recent past all the way back further in time, you have the legendary Yu, founder of the Jia dynasty, the first dynasty of ancient China in roughly 2000 BC, who is actually credited with driving the dragons out of ancient China. And of course, Yu taught everyone in China the legend of Nua and Fuxi, who survived the global flood, believing that it occurred, strangely enough, at a very precise date in 2952 BC. What's also really fascinating about that particular date is that, using my mathematics, when you're the Sumerian kings list, you're also going to come up with a flood date between 3500 and 3000 BC. And then going a bit deeper, right into the heart of the pages of the Septuagint, you're also going to get a flood date between 3500 and 3000 BC. But going a pinch further than that, if I look at actual world population numbers and growth rates, including all of the expansions and records of conquering new areas and expansion into the new worlds and the conquering of the entire globe itself, and you zip backwards to this point right here, rewinding time backwards to your first little bitty settlements, the inception of what we today call ancient Egypt, when it was just a little speck of little tiny mud brick buildings. Or hopping right over here to Mesopotamia, Samaria, ancient Assyria, the land of the Fertile Crescent. Strangely, both locations, both newly forming little places, falling right down from where pretty well everyone covers the boat that saved all mankind to have landed. Your numbers rewind backwards to 8 people on the planet Earth in that same date range. Probably all just really big coincidence, right? And accordingly, the records for pretty well every little footstep of all of this, spreading all the way around the globe in populations, no less, is extremely thorough. Putting it softly, let me ask you this. Dinosaurs, pretty large animal. How do you get something that size particularly mass tangles of them, all clumped together like they were in herds, buried underneath the ground. And you're definitely not going to get out of ancient Egypt without talking about dinosaurs, and most certainly not Uruk, Ur, or any of these lands of ancient Samaria, Assyria, without talking about the dinosaur dragons. But you must have not gotten all of the dinosaur dragons out of China. After all, Chinese history, you have wealths of recipes and medications that part of the required ingredients is dragon. Now, in the legend of St. George and the dragon, it's not recorded as legend in the historical records. It's recorded as actual history. There were apparently a group of pagans that a Roman soldier, St. George, had found out had a dragon that they had captured. And they were feeding the dragon sheeps on a daily basis, and then they had bumped that up to feeding the dragon captured children, their own children, and then had decided to bump that up to sacrificing virgins, letting the dragon loose on them. St. George actually became a saint by riding in there with Roman soldiers and physically killing the dragon. If you get out there into the deep jungle where there was deep occult, where it really goes brutal, in the hardcore outbacks of Amazon, Peru, South America, where they not only have their mammoth altars and temples to the serpent, where they would literally rip out the heart of captives to offer up to the dark gods of the serpents and dragons, Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan. But if you take a harder look at those South American accounts, there are certainly, shall we say, indications of legends that go a little deeper. Okay, buddy, I know we captured you and you're a little disoriented. We're going to take the blindfold off of you and untie your hands. See those big doors back there where you hear the snarls coming out? We're going to open those doors up, no matter what runs at you, at full speed. Here's your weapon. We're going to be on the walls up there, watching everything. We're rooting for you. Good luck to you, buddy. The real question isn't where were they talking about dragons in the ancient world. The real question is, where weren't they talking about dragons? To such a vast and unbelievable degree that it was the paleontologist and anatomist Sir Richard Owen who put forth not only evidence of these creatures, but proposed the scientific name for a specific classification of animal, thereafter being called dinosaurs.
My prediction is this: the fossil record is full of soft tissue. This is the norm rather than the exception. That's my prediction.
We have a number of predictions on this. One is that they're going to keep finding dinosaur soft tissue regardless, independent of the claimed age of the fossil. Also, another prediction that dinosaur soft tissue will not be found only in rare circumstances, but it'll be found easily, that is, when looked for.
And so I invite whomever to prove me wrong. Go out and dig up the fossils. Do the decalcification. Do the microscopy. In fact, I will teach you myself if you don't know how to do it. Because I want you to prove me wrong. If I'm wrong, I want to know it. But that's my prediction. This is the norm in the fossil record, not the exception.
Creation journals, by the way, are the best science journals in the world. But this is the Journal of Paleontology. And so when they publish that they have found original biological material in a beardworm, and this beardworm, like you said, Trey, they start up at the top, they get down to the bottom, Cambrian, and then Precambrian. This is a Precambrian beardworm. It's supposed to be 500 million years old. We should hear it. And by April 2014, the Journal of Paleontology reported that they found original soft tissue in Precambrian beardworms. This is what they claim are 530 million years old. So they look in these fossils, it doesn't matter how old they are, and lo and behold, soft tissue. I'd love for you to hear this one. Eventually, everything falls apart.
Yeah.
And so after 1 million years, you are not going to have any protein. You're not going to have collagen. You're not going to have DNA. But what we're finding is it doesn't matter how old the fossil is. If they look for soft tissue, they're going to find it. We don't mean in every fossil, but we mean you go look in a handful of fossils, you'll find soft tissue.
There's snails, there's worms, and there's this human fossilized finger found in the Paluxy River near Glenrose, Texas.
And that, mind you, is merely the intro to Jurassic. The total documentary is 2 hours and 19 minutes, or roughly thereabout. You just watched about 50. So there's much more than 2 more hours of documentary. And in the intro, it was important to us, important to me, really important to me, that we covered all of the just basic groundwork stuff on dinosaurs before really digging into the heart of it. And on top of that, the video that we got up the other day, the video on titled Evolution that went up on YouTube the other day, that is additional that's not in the Jurassic documentary. That's additional content that was important to us, that it made it up there, so that it was just available for public view to anyone, including Richard. And on top of that, this business of the diving low into the evil Lucian, the allegations of the haze of issues surrounding the smashing of the dinosaur human footprints out there in Glenrose, Texas. We were so astounded on this end in researching and how ugly that was. I won't spoil it for you. The documentary, short documentary, is up there. But it's not just Richard Dawkins and whatever may have occurred with the dinosaur human footprints in Glenrose, Texas. But inside the Jurassic documentary, Lawrence Krauss, seen right here, Richard Dawkins' left-hand man, I guess, gets a little bit frisky with Bob Enyart. Let me play you a clip, for example.
They see it for themselves, and then they're just bewildered. And they also don't understand why they never heard of it. And the reason they never heard of it is because it is overwhelming evidence that the atheistic worldview is false and that the Bible's true.
And so, but what we've been able to say is that plausibly, it's certainly plausible, and doesn't look like there's any need for any supernatural shenanigans. The simple laws of physics will do it.
Now, Lawrence Krauss, you know, as I've just introduced myself, that I'm the pastor of Denver Bible Church.
Yes.
So if I end up disagreeing with you on a point, and you're able, with your knowledge, to confirm that there are many scientists who would agree with me, could you let the audience know, because I might need your help in refuting you?
Sure, yeah, as long as if we're talking science, absolutely.
Yeah, if we're talking science. But between you and Richard Dawkins, you guys concede fully half of the argument to us creationists and to the intelligent design folks.
And say, how can you? I mean, the question is, do you disagree with the science? And if so, what's your scientific base?
I love the science. Oh. I'm an amateur. I'm a radio talk show host for 22 years, 5 days a week. I've debated, people like Michael Shermer, Eugenie Scott. Back in the 90s, Eugenie Scott was on with me for an hour, and she said the best evidence for evolution was junk DNA. And I said, the Bible teacher, I said, well, Eugenie, don't you think it's too early in our study of genetics to conclude affirmatively that all this non-coding, all those regions are junk? And she said, we have it. We sell the DVD. She said, we absolutely know affirmatively that it has no function. Now fast forward 15 years, and it's the Bible pastor who was right, and one of the world's leading atheists who was wrong. Scientist.
Well, first of all, Jeannie isn't a geneticist.
No,
secondly,
neither am I.
I mean, I'm a little worried when people make a mistake and say something, then suddenly it doesn't mean the science is wrong, it means the scientist is wrong.
Well, I agree with that. I agree with that.
You know, to say we affirmatively... I'm surprised Jeannie would say that, because in science we generally cannot, regarding things we don't yet understand, we can't affirmatively argue with certainty about anything.
What is this a tibia? Okay, what kind of a dinosaur do you guess it might be from? And bear in mind, that's just where those debate clips between Bob Enyart and Mr. Larry Krause over here get started. Each one getting more and more intense as the roller coaster ride gets further underway until it is each clip seemingly more desperate to claw onto than the last. I'll let Mr. Larry Krause's words speak for themselves, and the gospel that he sings do its own storytelling. On the other side of the coin, I'll let Bob's words also speak for themselves. I am extremely comfortable with that. During the making of this documentary, I was reminded of a book that was actually written during the 1980s, a book that's actually sat on the desk of presidents, a deliberate dumbing down of America. Really, she argues the education, the entire Western world, by Charlotte Iserbyt, who was the former head of policy of the Department of Education. It was actually systematically walking you through in that book some very, very disturbing things. For example, that we're trying to identify resistors. Basically, weed the smart people out of the education system. And following suit with that, though, this particular video deals just with the spectrum of what's told about dinosaurs. I would argue that it encompasses a larger scope than that. In fact, the words of that book, actually, that she's made available for free at this point, almost seem prophetic in retrospect, just in the research of this film alone, just dealing with dinosaurs. In modern sciences, I hear this term, free thinker, quite a lot. Accordingly, if I'm understanding the current definition of the term free thinker, what that means is to never look at the actual data yourself. No. You don't run off questioning. You get right on back here. As we've been so diligently trying to explain to you, you're really just a bunch of monkeys. And after all, if you breed monkeys, it would just almost make common sense that eventually that would pump out people. Just like if you were to plant apple seeds, you would certainly expect to eventually grow bananas. And on top of that, it cost us a political fortune to pump those terribly plausible ideas right into your head systematically from childhood. Now, what you want to do is leave the big questions in this life up to top experts who are going to tell you immediately that what you certainly want to do, I mean the scientific thing to do, would be to immediately mark at anyone who would dare suggest that you investigate anything, and accordingly, if provided the opportunity and some canned laughter, to laugh along mindlessly. I mean, after all, from a practical perspective, you don't want to go wasting your time on stuff like this that's already so rock solid and so well established that it's almost unquestionably true, correct? And make sure you always come and check with us, the scientists, to make sure that what you're parroting is exactly what we told you to parrot. In that fashion, you can be absolutely certain that you're being a true free thinker. It's almost like dealing with herds of zombies out there. What's amazing is that all of this was actually being told, being pleaded, being begged. This isn't going to end well. Decades ago. And also, Mark Armitage, shown right here, is in the video. And when you see the soft tissue, the spectacular soft tissue that Mark Armitage has found, this man has been on more professional dinosaur digs, pulling out soft tissues than anyone else that I can find. And you're going to see in this video why, when you're looking at the images and those dino cells and tissues from a multiplicity of creatures come to life right before your eyes, why this would make anyone needing those dinosaurs to be old really nervous and quite uncomfortable. And Mark Armitage, he's the man that was fired, that made national news for being fired from Cal State University. He's in a real David and Goliath fight. I would ask you on the other side of the screen to take a look at his labs and the work that he's doing, and consider, if you can or if you have it, helping his labs. He is in a David and Goliath fight, from my view, with that university and my understanding of it. I would ask this. I would humbly ask that at bare minimum, keep Mark and his family in your prayers. And one of those prayers from my end would be that this very message make it to the right people at Cal State. I would ask this on behalf of this man here on the screen behind me, man who built the shining pinnacle, the diamond of your own laboratories. And this man here behind me, holding up parts of unfossilized dinosaur bone littered with soft tissue. And this is the reason, if I'm understanding right, that he was fired. For some reason, that's not okay to present the dinosaur, whatever the case. I would humbly ask this. If the man that builds the shining diamond of your own laboratories is not worthy of respect, is not worthy of a little bit of honor, and is not worthy of his own and his own family's livelihood, after he's giving his whole heart to your own projects, if even a man like that is not worthy of a pinch of respect, my question would be to Cal State or to anyone, if that can't be made right, what hope would there be for any student within that university? My prayer would be this, that what would otherwise seem an ugly situation, that maybe, just maybe, hearts could warm enough to turn that around. What an honor that would be, from my perspective, to be able to say, there was some kind of problem over here, but these people, they came in and they made it right. And accordingly, I would state this, that a lot of the most amazing people on the face of the planet Earth that I get to write to, that I get to talk to back and forth, are men and women from the education system and from universities. You have some of the most fascinating and amazing people in your sciences, and some of them do it for very little income. On the other side of that fence, within sciences and within education, one of the things that I'm submitting to your hands for you to decide, the viewer on the other side of the screen, is here's the data. And that's actually what good journalism is. For you to be able to, not me or anybody else, force-feeding you opinions or ideas or keeping you back from evidence. No, that's too good for you to have. But to just hand it to you so that you can decide, just as I'd want to, or anyone else would want to, have the actual data so they can make their own decision. And that's what every single video that I make is about. Jurassic is not just a good video. In fact, that is the mother of all dinosaur videos that you're going to find anywhere, certainly from my opinion. And a proud addition to the God in a Nutshell set of videos. But more than that, just like all of the stuff from God in a Nutshell, it's going to look absolutely fantastic in your homes and excellent on your coffee table and watchable much more than one time. I'm Trey Smith. God bless every last one of you on the other side of the screen.